Hi, I'm Tarrin Wills from the Dictionary of Old Norse Prose at the University of Copenhagen. And what I would like to talk about today is a method that I've used for making a one-way bilingual dictionary from a translated corpus, which is actually linked at the lexical level, and how we do that. Now, there are various methods for producing bilingual dictionaries in the digital era based on translated corpora. And one that should be well known to everyone at this conference, and one which I learned about in the host city itself, which unfortunately we can't visit, is Sketch Engine. And this has a mechanism whereby parallel aligned corpora can be used to produce bilingual dictionaries in a fairly automated way with some post-editing. Here, the corpora rely on this alignment process, and effectively the sentence is the smallest level in which two corpora can be aligned because of the differences in between different natural languages. But this still produces quite impressive results. This is this process of producing a dictionary based on a translated corpus can also be done manually in the digital age, still produce very interesting results. And the example I'm using here is from the same source material, the source language as the main project here, which is the Lexicon of the Nordic Medieval Laws, which is a project that based on a set of translations of medieval Norse laws from Northern Europe. And this relied on manual excerption of the words and basically listing the translations that are used in the translation corpus for most entries, although a lot of them are expanded. And we have an example here, which is unfortunately partially covered by my face, where the word Frilubarn is translated in either as concubine's child or illegitimate child in the underlying corpus. So these are simply listed here. So it's there's no definition as such, but it provides a lot of information about the word simply by taking the translations out of the corpus. Now, the project that is the focus of this paper is the Lexicon Poeticum project, and there's the address. It's based on the corpus of Old Norse Icelandic skaldic poetry, which was in turn developed by the Skaldic project. Now, this is an extremely complex corpus, which has all sorts of issues. It's got a very large lexicon considering the size of the corpus. It's got a very complex word order. It's often preserved in problematic ways that we have to deal with. But I'm not going to worry too much about all of those things because that's not so relevant today. The corpus that is the edition project includes an edition and translation of the whole corpus, which isn't very big, but linked at the level of the word. So we're talking here of about 150,000 words. And I'll show you how this is done very shortly. So the dictionary supplements the dictionary I now work for, the Dictionary of Old Norse Prose, by covering most of the material that's not already covered by the main historical Dictionary of Old Norse. And the reason why it wasn't covered was simply because in 1939, when ONP started, there was already a new dictionary of Old Norse poetry. But of course, now close to a century has passed since the new dictionary of Old Norse poetry was made. So it's a good time to start supplementing the prose dictionary again. And the basis of this project was a Marie Curie individual fellowship that I got starting in 2016. But all of this raises the problem. How on earth are you supposed to make a quality historical dictionary consisting of at least 15,000 letters in just 2 years? Well, I had a lot of help. Now, I'm going to switch here to a live demonstration with all of the risks involved there. Now, this is what the Skaldic project text looks like. We have a poetic text here, and this is actually put into a prose word order. So the syntax of or the word ordering of the text is so complicated that effectively almost all editions provide a reordered word order so that the reader can better understand what is going on. There's a lot of mixed in clauses and an unusual word orders here. Poetry is like this generally, but this takes it to a bit more of an extreme. The translation, has a lot of periphrases that need to be glossed, but you can see here, Thor had path, which is the name for Loki. Invite him on a challenging journey a short time ago. They were eager to crush the descendants of Thor to giants. There's a lot of other information here that I won't talk about. But basically, the main mechanism that's used at the corpus end is to align the text and translation at the level of the word. And the way this works is that the text is tokenized and the tokens can be rearranged here with a drag and drop mechanism. So the tokens are put into the English translation order, and the translations entered into here, and so that the link between the English translation and the underlying word is maintained. Now we do this in a similar way for the prose word order, which gives some interesting possibilities for how the two corpora are aligned at the lexical level. When the main process required at the lexicon level is to lemmatize the corpus. And this that you're seeing now is the main instrument that I developed for that. So we take the tokens from the corpus, we can mix in here the translations. We put them in the prose word order so it's easier to follow the syntax, and it's put into a vertical format, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So here it requires manual intervention because our target audience requires very, very high levels of accuracy. So we need to make sure that this is done very accurate, but we use statistical methods to assist the manual input by basically identifying the most likely lemmas for the given word forms in this highly inflected language. So you can see here that these are the suggested lemmas based on previous lemmatizations, and in most cases, and this is also based on other corpora as well, in most cases the first result is correct, and in some cases the second is the most likely lemma. And in cases where it cannot predict which lemma should be linked to this word, you can simply type it in the accompanying search boxes here in order to look it up. So this produces a link between the lemma, the translation, the word in the corpus, and all of the material attached to that word in the underlying edition project. And the result here is that we get an automatic dictionary entry. The gloss here is simply based on the most common translation of the word. It's not meant to be the main entry, but it's something to just assist us in finding the correct word sometimes. The semantic categories you see here come from another project, which I don't really have time to talk about today, unfortunately. But the main body of it is a list of citations that are pulled out of the corpus automatically once lemmatized. We have the translations here attached and underlined. We have both the verse word order and the prose word order, as well as the translation. So the reader can actually essentially work out in almost all cases what the word means simply based on this lemmatizing and translation process. It also means that we have a lot of other information linked in from the corpus, including the dates of composition of the poetry where available. I mean, these are not very predictable. Compounds of the word as found in other poetry. These circumlocutions that we call kennings and how they're analysed, and also the underlying physical records, the manuscripts. Now, What's quite interesting here is we can, with these links between the text and the corpus, is that we can keep these and visualize them in interesting ways too. So the prose word order, for example, can simply be reordered using some animations in a web page. And you can do the same with the translation, but I've removed that facility here because it's, I'm not quite sure how useful it is, and it's a little bit more ugly than just simply reordering the words themselves. Okay, so the issues we have is the main one, that we required a lot of forward planning in how the corpus is designed to facilitate this. And we have to remember that this is a very different, a slightly different model from what you would use with standard XML or vertical text formats. We need a relational model here, or something that allows this linking between different orderings of the material. The underlying translation is not a literary or popular translation. So as you might have noticed, it's not what you would call free-flowing idiomatic English. But for the underlying project, the translation is designed from the outset more to be a guide to the interpretation of the original poetry rather than a fluent English in itself, although it is English, recognizably English and idiomatic English, even if it's a bit strange sounding. And although this is a bit more extreme in this poetry, it's a fairly standard translation style for modernist translations of Old Norse literature in particular, that we try to maintain this accuracy. You need a manageable corpus. Although we can streamline the process to a great extent, we still require a lot of manual intervention. Hundreds of thousands of words are manageable, hundreds of millions are presumably impossible. And we're lucky that we have a source and target languages that are both Germanic, that diverged within thousands of years ago, and they can be aligned in relatively easily. And the reader is still left to determine the actual semantic scope based on the translated words that they find in the eventual dictionary. But still, it works. And I'd just like to say thank you to our hosts. I hope we can make it there again. And also to the Scholarly Project that provided the material that's worked for years and years and years on this in a very diligent way, and the European Commission for funding the project, and of course my still host institution for hosting it.